Welcome to the segment of Be Heard. My name is Gabby, and I'm here with Pastor Craig Lester, our pastor of worship ministries here at Faith Bible Church. Just had a couple questions for you in regards to Christianity and entertainment, the topic we've been discussing this week. So our first question for you is, how do you think that music affects us both negatively and positively?
I think music, some of it, is kind of, it may feel like it's a little overblown at first. I mean, people will say, music, it has such a power to kind of move the emotions. And, but to me, that's almost a given if you kind of think about it. Like if you think about, for instance, in a film, any movie, there's always an underscore. There's music that's, beneath the scene, that's kind of supporting the scene, and never even, sometimes it doesn't even really kind of rise up to the level of consciousness where you're kind of paying attention to it. But it's there. I mean, one of my, for better or for worse, man, one of my favorite composers right now is probably Randy Newman. And I think he is, like in the film world, my understanding is, he's a genius. To be honest, he's a great composer, but then he writes, kind of like in the American popular song, like in that idiom, in that format, he writes songs, but he always writes them from kind of the perspective of a character. And so it gives him the ability to kind of get into character and treat it as if, I think, this is my interpretation of what he's doing, treat it as if he were, writing for film, which he's so good at. And so even though he's not a Christian, I think he's an atheist. I believe I read this somewhere. But what's so interesting is talking about the power of music. On his latest album, I think it's called Dark Matter, the last song on the album is called Wandering Boy. And when I hear it, it is almost impossible for me not to tear up, just because of the subject matter, just because of the way he tells this story with the music underneath. It's so sparse and the chords are just so, and the way he just paints it, it's really hard to listen to it and not be affected and not be moved. So, without question, yes, music can move us positively or negatively. So the question is, what kinds of things, should I be looking for or listening to or music? Like, how do I make my music choices? I think that's kind of the next, maybe if that's okay. Yeah. The next part of that is, so then, music does move me. In my mind, I'm like, that's settled. So the question is, so what should I be listening to, right? Yeah. Because I do think, scripturally speaking, if you look at the book of Psalms, if you look at the wide range of emotion that's there, from, again, Psalm 16:11, this idea that there's fullness of joy in God's presence. That is not a reality to kind of, or something to talk about in the abstract, but it's something to be experienced. And here I am singing about this in the context of corporate worship. But then if you get to like Psalm, is it 88 or 87, I can't remember, but that's a part of the Psalter where it gets so dark. Yeah. And there is lament, and it's bad. And again, music, there's a musical underscore, there's music beneath that, that's supposed to help me plug into that emotion, those feelings, and the music helps me to do that. And so, I feel like God has given us music as a gift. It's a tool. But at the end of the day, it's one that is to be put in service in terms of feeling emotions and affections towards God that are appropriate and directed toward Him, right? There's no question that it can move the affections. Yeah. There's no question that it's powerful. The question is like, man, what music am I engaging with that allows me to do that in a way that honors the Lord? I don't know if that answers your question, but...
And that kind of leads into our next question, which is, how does this impact the way that you lead worship as a worship pastor?
I find that as a worship pastor, and do you mean like in terms of my music choices, kind of the way
like the way that you choose the music you listen to? How do you let that kind of impact the way that you are leading worship?
Yeah. I think by law, a song, even though I know I talked about film scores, but by law, there are kind of two parts to a song, right? There are lyrics and there's melody, right? And so on the melodic side, I am pretty open. I like a wide range of things. I like jazz a lot. I like neo soul. I like hip hop. I like classical. You name it, I've probably tried to listen to it. Again, talking about Randy Newman again, there are things that, in another album that he has that I'm like, man, this is kind of just kind of a different feel, and I like that, you know.
Right.
So, but that's one side of it. But the other part of it for me is the lyrical content. I mean, I'm thinking about the words, and so as I'm preparing to lead worship, I try to live my life in such a way that, I mean, at any point, you know, for better or for worse, I mean, I feel like I could do this. You know, if you were to kind of eavesdrop on my Spotify playlist and you heard what I was listening to, I would like to believe that for the most part, you know, the things that I'm listening to, it would be something that would honor the Lord. And so as I'm preparing to lead worship, and I'm, you know, preparing to stand on the platform, you know, before God's people and to lead them, we could talk about what that means, to lead them into God's presence, into a time of singing together. I mean, what I listen to before I do that, it matters. It matters tremendously. But it's no different than, what I'm getting at is what I would listen to any other time, right? I mean, I love for those things, and sometimes they do better than others, but I'm working on that. That's one of the places where I'm like, Lord, I want to be the same on and off the platform. Yeah. And so the things that I'm listening to during the week, that lyrical content and that melodic content is either pushing me toward the Lord and kind of stoking the fire and the joy that I have in knowing Him and in His presence. It's either doing that or it's pushing me away from Him. Yeah. And if it's pushing me away from Him, that's music that I'm like, I don't want to do that, because I know it would be bad, it would be wrong, it would be false then to stand on the platform and now let me pretend, let me put on, let me fake as if, you know, like, oh man, I love Jesus so much. No, I off the platform, let me love Jesus, you know, and music helps me do that. It helps me connect and express my affection for Him, so that when I get on the platform with said songs or different songs or whatever, you know, it's no different. It's no different. So that's what I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of what I'm aiming for when in my music choices.
Okay.
In terms of
cool.
worship leading,
So why do you think that music is such an important part of corporate worship, like corporate church?
I think the more I've read about this, there are some people that have been incredibly helpful to me. It's probably not even enough time to even kind of go into this, but I mean, of all people, it's kind of funny. I've always loved music. I did not plan to be a worship pastor. Did not think about it when I was in college, though I was a music major. I switched my major to music because I love music, right? But it's just interesting to me. Over time, the Lord began to really clarify some things for me. And in terms of, you know, what is more important even than music, again, is this ideal of the whole person, all of me, being totally engaged in my relationship with the Lord. And part of that is the affections, right? And so I remember one author that I love is John Piper. And I remember reading kind of for the first time about, you know, Christian hedonism and this ideal of just finding God is most satisfied in me, or most glorified in me. Sorry, God is most glorified in me when I'm most satisfied in Him. Is there anything else that satisfies me, that fills me with more joy, that makes me happier than the Lord Himself? And the Lord just used that, reading, you know, things like, you know, Jonathan Edwards' treatise on the religious affections, you know, or trying to read it. You know, I mean, it's on the old side, so the language is a little, you know, it is what it is. But just kind of working through those things, or like a quote from St. Augustine, again, one of those things that I got from John Piper. You know, we love thee too little if we love anything altogether with thee that we love not for your sake. And so reading that and just hearing for the first time, wait a minute, I'm supposed to have, my affections are supposed to be engaged. My heart is supposed to be engaged. Well, then from there, the Lord started to use that, call me into ministry, and I find myself, you know, standing in front of a congregation with a microphone in front of me, with the piano in front of me. And it's a very different thing, right, even than where I was in college. And I'm just thinking, no, what am I supposed to be doing, you know? But it made total sense to me, again, because of the way these threads started to come together. One of the things that music allows us to do corporately is to be able to kind of fan into a flame those affections. You know, that the heart, it's to involve not just the mind, but also to allow the heart to enter into, you know, the truth of who God is, and to celebrate that. And in all the ways that are biblically appropriate. Because sometimes in a worship moment, a song is helping me say to the Lord, you know, I'm sorry. You know, I've sinned. There's contrition, and there's a music that there's a sound that supports that. And again, it's just things we already see in the Psalms. I mean, we don't necessarily have musical notes or melodies or anything like that written down in the Psalms, but you can see, to the choir master, to the chief musician, So, I mean, music is incredibly important in terms of corporate worship because it allows us Sunday in and Sunday out to come into a room together and be about the main thing that I would argue Christianity is to be about, and that is all of me, every part of me, being for the Lord Jesus, being totally satisfied in him more than anything else. And then we do that together corporately. This allows us to encourage each other, when we can sing together. That allows us to do that together because Christianity is not an individualistic enterprise.
Right.
It's supposed to happen in the context of community. Music gets us all. We're singing the same thing, saying the same things at the same time, and we're voicing that to the Lord from a place of spirit and truth. And I think it's powerful. So I think music helps that. It's biblical. The Lord commanded it. Sing and make melody. Ephesians 5. So yeah. That's kind of that's my thoughts. I hope I answered your question.
You did. Awesome. Well, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for answering these questions for us today.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you,
sir.
Yep.